Now we begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, as the recording is not played twice. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning. My name is Keith Waters. I'm interested in finding out about certain type of holiday. Would you be able to help me with that?
Welcome to Sunshine Tours Agency. My name's Penny. Yes, I'm sure I can help you with that. What exactly are you thinking about?
My wife and I are interested in a cruise of the Mediterranean.
That's a nice idea. A cruise on a ship in the Mediterranean is very popular right now. Can I take some basic details from you first so I can work out what kind of cruise might suit you?
Of course.
So your name is Keith Waters, and your wife's?
Her name is Melissa Waters.
Would you spell Melissa for me?
It's Melissa.
And it's just you and your wife?
That's right. We don't have any children.
Okay, let me make a note of that. Fine. Now, how old are you both?
I'm 32 and my wife's 30.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask about your interests and hobbies. This will help in choosing the right cruise for you.
We're both keen on traveling, of course. That's why we'd like to go on a cruise. We're also quite sporty. We both swim and jog quite a lot. We're interested in cinema and history. Melissa is also a keen fiction reader, but I prefer nonfiction.
What kind of budget were you thinking about?
We can spend between $7,000 and $11,000 on the trip. As cheap as possible, of course, is best.
Right. I've got all that down. Now, I need to know when you'd like to go on your cruise and for how long.
Our holiday window starts on the 1st of July and ends on the 16th of July.
Okay.
And as for length, we'd like to have at least 14 nights on the ship.
Thank you. I'm sure that'll be possible.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
Right. I've got all that down and I've got some ideas for you.
I'll just make some notes while I listen, if that's all right.
Of course. So, we have 2 boats that fit the dates you want. They sail on different dates, so that gives you some flexibility. First of all, I'd like to suggest the cruise on the boat the Maria Cristina. It's a Spanish boat, and you'd fly to Barcelona to join her. The cruise from there costs $10,500 for both of you, although the flights to get to Barcelona will be extra. With that, you have all food and drinks free during the voyage. You get an inside cabin, which means that you don't get a sea view, but you can upgrade to a sea view for a further $800. They have a cinema on board with different films every night, and there are also lectures on the places where you will be visiting. There are also classes that you can do, for example, painting, cooking, art appreciation, and others.
That's just in our budget, but an upgrade would put us over.
Yes, you'd have to do without the upgrade. Travel insurance is incorporated within the price, though.
What about the next one?
That's the Sea Queen. This is also a Spanish boat, but it sails from Marseille in France and follows the same route as the Maria Cristina. Barcelona is the last stop before arriving back in Marseille. This costs $9,000 for both of you, but this includes the return flights to Marseille. With this package, you do get a sea view, and food is inclusive throughout the voyage. All drinks excluding water are extra, though. There are fewer things going on. There is a cinema, but there are no lectures or classes. There is a swimming pool and gym, though, so you'll be able to keep up with your exercise.
That's quite a lot of information, so I'd better get back and speak to my wife. She can come back here with me in 2 days, so I'll expect we'll have chosen which boat to go on by then. We can talk further details when we come in then.
That's great. See you in 2 days.
Yes, see you soon.
That is the end of part 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Part 2. Part 2. You will hear a woman giving some information about facilities at a holiday resort. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully to the information talk and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this information talk. Most of you arrived here at the Sun and Sand Resort yesterday evening, and it's my job today to let you know a little bit about what's available for you here and where these things are. We are currently in the main reception area. If you leave here, you'll find the ornamental lake right in front of you. Directly opposite, you'll find the bus stop, which I'll tell you more about later. If you take the path from the right-hand side of the lake, you'll pass the mini-golf on your left and, just after that, the swimming pool on the right. If you continue down the path, you'll reach the sports center, where you can use the resort's gym and squash courts, and also take part in the regular exercise classes that we run there. If you take the left-hand path from the lake, this will take you to the resort's private beach. On the way down, you'll see our tennis courts on the right-hand side. When you arrive at our beach, you'll see our snack bar on the right-hand side just behind the beach. Food and drink is available here. Back across the path from the snack bar is the activities office, which is also behind the beach. If you're not the type of person who just likes lying on the beach all day, you can visit this office and they'll give you details about the kayaks, sailing boats, pedalos, and various other beach equipment that we have. Finally, our beach is enclosed on both sides, and the area to the far left as you arrive by the path is reserved for over 18s. People can find there a quiet place away from the noise of children if they so wish.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the information talk and answer questions 16 to 20.
So, now that I've told you a little about where things are, I'd like to give you some information about them all. I mentioned earlier the resort's bus stop. This is from where our dedicated minibuses leave to take residents into the nearby town. This is 7 miles away, so taking this complimentary bus service is your best way of getting to the town. We also have a dedicated taxi at the hotel that you can use at any time if you wish, but this service must be paid for. Swimming at the resort's pool can be enjoyed only when there is a lifeguard on duty. This starts at 6:30 a.m. and finishes at 7:30 p.m. Swimming is all part of the Sun and Sand Resort's all-inclusive package. Exercise classes and use of the gym in the sports center are all complimentary, but lights for the squash courts have to be paid for. Coins have to be inserted into the meters so that you can have the light to play by. Booking a squash court itself is free. If you'd like to play tennis, book a court at reception. This is part of Sun and Sand Resort's all-inclusive package, as is use of all the recreational equipment at the beach, though a returnable $20 deposit is required for all equipment. Eating and drinking at the main buildings of the resort are also inclusive, but the beach snack bar is extra and things can be paid by cash or be put on the guests' bills. There is a deep-sea fishing activity that can be booked from reception. This is contracted out to a local fisherman and not part of the Sun and Sand Resorts package. The price list for the different fishing options available can be found at reception. Finally, we have entertainment at the main buildings of the hotel every evening. People can enjoy their inclusive food and drink dinners whilst enjoying the music, magic, dancing, or whatever is billed on the different evenings. We have quiz evenings weekly and sometimes comedy acts as well. We ask $1 for each team member for the quiz pot so that we can make a prize for the winners who get the whole pot.
That is the end of part 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
To Section 3. Section 3. You will hear Jim and Jane, 2 students, talking about their professor's lecture. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Jane, what did you think of Professor Morgan's lecture? I don't know about you, but I find it incredibly difficult to believe that light influences the environment as much as he says. I've never seen any journal articles, websites or anything that verifies his arguments. It's stupid.
On the contrary, I've seen a great deal of research supporting his argument from a wide range of renowned scientists. Have you looked at the recommended textbook listed on the course outline given to us at the beginning of the semester? All the information is in there. Perhaps you've just been looking in the wrong places.
I never look at the course outlines. I have so many loose sheets of paper I tend to lose anything I'm given by the end of the day. What's the textbook they recommend? And where can I get it from? I should probably go buy it soon. I'm already behind in the course.
Yeah, you definitely should buy it. And our grades are more important this year. It's called The Influence of Light on the Environment. You should be able to find it in the bookshop on campus. If not, they'll order it within 2 weeks. In the meantime, you should read up on Ken Simpson's work. He argues that in order to protect natural habitats, governments should endeavour to turn off lights in cities at night.
Well, that's controversial. I doubt any government would be willing to do that any time soon. I imagine roads would become quite dangerous without street lighting. For this issue, Dave Kepler suggests they could just replace the existing lights with more environmentally friendly bulbs. They could even install solar-powered lights. That way, roads will be more eco-friendly while maintaining safety. Although I guess they wouldn't be particularly effective in colder countries, especially during the winter.
That's quite a good idea, actually. The price of solar power is supposed to be on par with electricity within the next few decades, and it was on the news this morning. I've also heard that, according to Sharon Gray, in countries with more sunlight, insect-eating animals tend to be smaller in size. Since there are fewer insects, and the remaining insects produced a smaller number of eggs.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that sunlight also has a negative effect on the quality of water, but I'm not sure I believe it. In many hot countries, particularly developing countries, there is a lot of water pollution caused by factories rather than sunlight. Nevertheless, Maria Jackson says that in direct sunlight, the surface of the water becomes more translucent. Therefore, it affects the amount of sunlight that aquatic insects can absorb. Not much research has been undertaken to prove Jackson's theory, but it seems to have been widely accepted anyway.
I've never heard of that. I'll have to look it up on Google. The only other theory I've studied is Barbara Swallow's study on how declined insect population adversely affects the frog population. Not that I'm complaining. I hate insects, especially spiders.
You have arachnophobia? I never would have guessed. Didn't your brother have a pet black widow spider?
Yes, he did, and I hated it. It escaped from its cage once, and we never found it. I had nightmares for months.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, now I'm getting goosebumps. Let's change the subject. What's your stance on natural and artificial light?
Honestly, I'm not sure it makes much difference which one you use. Species will die out either way. I think the real argument we should consider is global warming and protection or replacement of finite fuels. Solar power provides us with an incredible opportunity to replace electricity, and governments should definitely increase spending on research in this field. The theories discussed in our lectures, like Simpson's and Gray's, are so vague and lack proof, so I don't understand why we even study them.
I see what you mean. I don't like learning unsupported theories for exams, and I'd rather spend my time learning something else. For example, I'd be much more interested in studying the animals in safari parks than researching migratory birds, particularly the effect of tourists on the quality of life of animals. As we know, every year thousands of visitors will drive in their own vehicles or ride in vehicles provided by the facility to observe freely roaming animals.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Especially those animals living in more tropical countries like Borneo. Following on from that, I want to study how bringing animals over from foreign countries to put in our zoos affects their life expectancy. For example, do you remember when China sent pandas to Edinburgh Zoo? Apparently, one of the pandas became depressed, but it was never explained why. To me, obviously, you can't take an animal out of its natural habitat and put it in a cage on the other side of the world. It just doesn't work.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a talk on the history of football in Great Britain in the 19th century. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Great Britain is often hailed as the home of football, with talented players travelling from far and wide to play for teams in the English Premier League, one of the most popular football leagues on the planet. Today we are going to take a look back to the 19th century Great Britain, in an attempt to trace the evolution of the beautiful game, as it is now known. Prior to the 19th century, the game featured a wide variety of local and regional adaptations, which were later smartened up and made more uniform to create our modern-day sports of association football, rugby football, and Ireland's Gaelic football. Even up to the mid-19th century, Shrovetide football, or mob football, was still widely practiced. According to the rules of mob football, there were no rules. A player could legally use any means whatsoever to obtain the ball, such as kicking, punching, biting, and gouging, with the only exceptions being murder and manslaughter. These games may be regarded as the ancestors of modern codes of football, and by comparison with later models of football, they were chaotic and had few cooperation. Towards the latter end of the 19th century, and moving into the early part of the 20th century, however, there appeared a newfound emphasis on moral values in football. Perhaps a more modern example of this can be seen in John Terry's suspension as England captain, following reports of his infidelity to his wife. Furthermore, as mob football died away, there grew a greater concern for players' health and general well-being, with many clubs affording their top players access to frequent medical checkups and treatment. Despite the presence of Great Britain's unique state-funded National Health Service, football clubs are still seen today, providing team members with state-of-the-art healthcare facilities, with the top clubs even housing their own specialist doctors and physicians. Today, football is a key feature of school children's day-to-day education, particularly for boys. With the help of football associations, all schools in the UK are boasting their own football teams. This mainly comes as a result of pressure put on schools and the government by concerned parents, who felt that football education taught their children valuable lessons and indeed vital life skills, such as teamwork and a drive to succeed. Nowadays, many of the UK's top football clubs provide training facilities and outreach programs in an attempt to educate the nation's aspiring youths. As I previously mentioned, it was only during the 19th century that football in its uniform concept truly began to emerge, with footballers previously playing according to their own versions of the rules. However, it was not until the early 20th century that different players actually began to play according to these standardized rules. Prior to the 19th century, football was played by all the major English public schools, including the likes of Eton College, Winchester College, and Harrow. In 1848, there was a meeting at Cambridge University in an attempt to lay down the laws of football. Present at the meeting were representatives of each of these major public schools, whom each brought a copy of the rules enforced by their own individual school's rules of football. The result of the meeting was what is now known as the Cambridge Rules, thereby uniting the rules from across the country into one simple document. However, the Cambridge Rules were not liked by all, and a new set of rules, Thring's Rules, compounded in the book The Simplest Game, became commonplace among dissenters. Across the country, improvements in infrastructure and public transport had a knock-on effect of dramatically increasing attendance to football games. Football quickly became a social event where spectators would meet friends, drink tea, and chat about the good old days. As football became more and more popular, it was decided that more money should be invested in maintaining the quality of pitches, amongst other things, and there was even talk of installing seating for spectators. However, the question of who was to foot the bill quickly became a divisive issue, with many believing that the government should fund football's development as a national sport. But in the end, the onus fell upon Britain's local and regional football clubs for the funding and development of the Football Association. They became responsible for the upkeep of football grounds, began to pay their best players a small salary, and organised competitions against other local and regional teams. And there began England's Football Association, or the FA, as we know it in its current form, the governing body of football in England. As the FA continued to grow and accumulate greater wealth, it was able to attract more and more talented young men from across the country, before finally accepting professional talent